thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is McKaylee. I'm with Tattered Cover Bookstore, and I want to just say thank you. Thank you so much for joining us on your Wednesday night. We are ecstatic to be able to have this virtual community here. Tattered Cover is normally a communal place where people can gather, read books, and browse. And right now, unfortunately, in our world, we can't do that. So we're really excited to be having you here in this virtual space. So thank you for continuing to support local independent bookstores, local businesses, and for joining us online today. For those of you who may be joining us from around the nation, we actually have a lot of people already talking about where they're from. We are located in Denver, Colorado. We have 4 locations in the Denver metro area, which if you are in Colorado in the Denver metro area, you can come visit us at any of our locations. We are open to the general public. As long as you come in wearing your mask over your mouth and your nose, you can come join us and shop for about 90 minutes or so. If you're like me and you want to stay shopping in your pajamas or you're not in the Denver metro area, you can always shop online at tatteredcover.com for all of your bookish needs, honestly. Media in its storytelling in all its forms is getting us through this pandemic right now. And so we encourage you to go online and shop there and support local independent bookstores. We cannot thank you enough for that. I want to also just let you know that closed captioning is available for those who might need it. All you have to do is toggle your mouse over the screen you're watching me on right now. There's a black bar at the bottom, and it'll say CC, the button that you need to click. And closed captioning then is available for those who might want it or need it. Couple of upcoming events we have Rio Cortez tomorrow morning for a virtual story time for the ABCs of Black history, which should be really amazing. And then we have Umi Grigsby on Monday the 8th, who's talking about empowered health and the racism she's faced in the health industry. So you should definitely check those out as well. But now, I want to move on to our authors that we have here tonight. We do have 2 authors. We have Sherri Shepherd, who is actually going to be in conversation with Bevy Smith, our main author for the evening. You may know Sherri from being the former co-host of The View, and she's the current host of This Nation and the podcast Two Funny Mamas. And Bevy Smith is the host of SiriusXM's Bevelations on Radio Andy and a former co-host of Bravo's Fashion Queens, the entertainment news show Page 6 TV. She's a beloved motivational speaker, brand ambassador, pulp culture aficionado, television personality, and businesswoman. Quintessential Harlem girl and a lifelong New Yorker. Bevy's born and raised and still lives and loves in Harlem, New York. And she is the author of the latest book, Bevelations, which is what the 2 women will be talking about tonight. It is my honor to welcome both Sherri and Bevy, and we're going to have them join me on video now. Here we go. Any minute. There's Bevy. Hello. And Sherri. Welcome, ladies. Oh, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. This is so much fun. I can't begin to tell you. Thank you, please, I forgot how to...
McKaylee.
McKaylee, thank you. You got to spell so exotically. Thank you. And please support small businesses, support Tattered Covers. This is like so amazing. I'm so honored, Bevy, that you asked me to come into conversation with you about Bevelations. Can I say this book had me up, it had me laughing, it had me in tears. I know you know what chapter that is, and we will talk about it. The life lessons from this book were just so amazing. So we gonna jump right into it.
Yes.
How are you today?
Oh wow. I'm exhausted. Sherri, you have written 2 books, but when you wrote your books and when you promoted your books, you were in the world. You were doing press tours in the world. And so my press tour happens literally here in my living room. My living room was set up like a studio. My second bedroom has all this like stuff in it from all the things that we have to do to create these studios and things like that. And so it's a very exhausting thing to do back-to-back press, but just in one space and having to look into a camera. But when I tell you, coming here to the Tattered Cover and being in conversation with a woman who represents the bestie in the title of Bevelations, Lessons from a Mother, Auntie, Bestie, I was so excited. I'm so incredibly honored that you did this for me, and that as soon as I asked you, you said yes. You just said, I just have to figure out the dates. That's all you asked for.
I know I got the text and I had my hair bonnet on, my wig wasn't on. I was looking like Set It Off. And I got the text from you and I said, yes, I want to do this. I didn't care. We made it work. But the book, Bevelations, A Lesson from a Mother, Auntie, and a Bestie. What does each one mean? A mother, auntie, bestie.
Yeah, so the mother represents what my gay sons call me. They call me mother. And it really is an incredible honor that was bestowed upon me from my babies from Fashion Queens, Derek J. and Miss Lawrence. They started calling me mother on the set of Fashion Queens, and it really stuck. And it also comes from the Black gay ballroom scene of the mother of the house and things like that. So I take that honorary title very, very, seriously, and it really means a lot to me. Now, auntie comes from, well, one, I have 4 beautiful nephews and a beautiful niece and a beautiful grandnephew. So I am the supreme Auntie Bev to them, and I'm the cool auntie for them. But now on TV, so many young women have watched me over the years, and they think of me as their rich auntie and their cool auntie, and I take that on. But Sherri, I have to tell you, you have to be a young woman to call me auntie.
Yes.
Okay, don't be sitting up here 40 years old talking about Auntie Bev. Like
I don't like that.
Exactly, because they try you, Sherri. You know they try.
Because the thing about auntie, and people have asked me this, can I call you auntie? If you're younger than me, I'm good with it because you're honoring me for my wisdom, for what I'm bringing to the table. Yes, by all means, call me auntie, but don't be older than me or we the same age and you calling me auntie.
No, that ain't gonna work. So for all my young babies, all my young girls, 35 and under, yes, I'm Auntie Bev. I love it. And then of course, bestie. Now this is the sweet spot of it all. This is all of us grown women that done been through some things and done did some things. And this is the folks that we vacation with, we cocktail with, we cry with, we celebrate with. This is the bond. This is the sisterhood.
Yes.
And that's what we have.
And that is what we have. I love this because, and this is so much information that I have. I'm going to put my glasses on because I got to read.
Okay, sexy secretary. Sexy secretary.
My sexy secretary. Look, here we go. There's so many adjectives to describe you, so many phrases. You're gal about town. You're an uptown girl. You're a Harlem gal. You're a nerdy uptown girl. Big Bear from uptown. Cultured, world traveler, lover of literature. You are Little Brown Bevy. Can you give me some explanation for all of these names, all of these identities?
Yeah. Well, Little Brown Bevy is who I am at the core of me. That's the best part of me. Little Brown Bevy represents the girl that I left behind when I was 13 years old and I was tired of being bullied and I went to a different high school and I decided to remake myself. That was the first time I ever changed my life. The first time I ever took control of my life was when I was 13 years old and I went to Norman Thomas High School versus going to Murray Bertram. And that's where all my bullies went. And I said, I'm not going to go to that school because if I go there, it will just be another 4 years of being tortured. And I went to a different school, but I left Little Brown Bevy behind because Little Brown Bevy was the girl who could be bullied. She was the girl who didn't quite fit in. She was the girl who was a little left of center. She's a little nerdy, a little geeky, you know what I mean? She had interests that were not the typical cool girl from the hood interest. And so I needed to squash her. And so I left her behind. And when I became really dissatisfied with my life, Sherri, I realized that it was because I had left behind the best part of me. The Little Brown Bevy was the curious girl, the adventurous girl, the empathetic girl. She was the best part. And so when I went back and got her, that's when I really was able to change my life. So Little Brown Bevy is the core of who I am. And that's who shows up on everything that I do now. You know, there's Big Bev from Uptown. I love her. Now, Big Bev from Uptown is the one, honey. She was the one that was in them streets making it pop. You know, the golden age of hip hop. You know, all the stories with all the big hip hop stars and all the shenanigans that you could ever think of. If you saw the Wendy Williams story, okay. I didn't do all there were some differences in it, but as far as the fun and the shenanigans and all the parties, I definitely partook in all of that. That's Big Bev from Uptown. And then, we have the cultured girl and the world traveling, all those parts of me. And those parts are really so important because that represents the evolution. The
Of who
evolution.
you are. I want to take it back to the early days because right now you are living in who you are. You are owning your womanhood and being grown. But like you said, when you started out, you were getting bullied. You were in fear. You were scared. You were a little left of center, but you wouldn't be who you are today without your parents. So you grew up in Harlem, which you represent. When I go out to eat with you, it's never on, on the West Side. We are always in Harlem. It's the best restaurants. But, growing up, what was your life growing up? Were you out there in the streets? Did you have your mom and your father always in the home? Tell me about your childhood.
Yeah, I'm the baby of the family. I have a big brother named Jerry, who's watching. My big sister Stephanie, I think she's watching as well.
Hey,
And
Jerry.
I
Hey,
was thinking,
Stephanie.
yes. And they were wonderful big siblings, older siblings. They really did take care of me. They both gave me a lot. They both taught me so much, different things. But my sister gave me literature. My brother he taught me how to roller skate. He used to take me out to like all kinds of parties and fun things. He also was an artist. He's a painter.
Yeah.
He helped me with my love of art. So many gifts. And then of course I had my parents. My mother Lolly, who you've seen, Sherri, who is
Yes.
fashion place.
Oh, the fashion queen.
Yeah, she's a fashion queen, darling. At the age of 93, she still lays and slays. And she was just a wonderful woman to have as a mother because she always appreciated her girls and she never hesitated to tell us we were beautiful. And not in that way of you're beautiful. No, she really meant it. We would come out and dressing out in our raunchy clothes, and she'd be like, "You girls look so pretty. Look at my girls' pretty shapes. Oh, Bevy, look at your pretty legs. I'm gonna enter you into a legs contest." My mother was that type of person. So when I had to go out into the world and I had to go into white spaces where women were supposed to be 6 feet tall and 120 pounds, that had no effect on me because I knew that the way they looked was nice for them, but that ain't had nothing to do with me. The way I looked was a good thing. I was more than enough, honey. And sometimes I was too much. Okay, okay. So that's what my mother gave me, right? That sense of confidence and self-esteem. My daddy, Smitty, Gus Lee Smith, I always have to say his name in interviews because that keeps him with us, that keeps him alive. And that means that he's present here in the room with us. My dad was a learned man. He taught himself, much of what he knew, and then he instilled that in us. My daddy loved history. He loved geography. He's the reason why I travel the world. And there's never been a time. The last trip I took when my daddy, well, actually the last big trip that I took was December for New Year's Eve. I went to Ghana and then I went to Casablanca. And never have I gone on a trip where my daddy has not told me about where I was going. He would always give me some kind of tip about where I was going, the money that was going to be used or the language that was spoken or what ocean it was residing on or whatever. My father was like that. And this is a man who grew up in Jim Crow South with maybe a 5th grade, 7th grade education. But my father was one of the most intelligent men I've ever known. And that was my family. And we were this small, lovely little family in the hood, but grew up, kind of like very lower middle class, never wanting for much. And they instilled a lot into us. And we also were not allowed to hang out in the streets, which is why I think we were bullied. My sister never wanted to be a cool kid, but I had those leanings. My sister knew the cool kids wasn't about nothing. She was the wise one.
My mother was the same as your mother. We were not allowed to go out. We couldn't hang out because we were in Chicago. We couldn't hang out on the stoop, couldn't hang out on the porch. We always had to be in reading a book. She had us reading a book or the newspaper. That, to this day, I love to read the newspaper because of that. So the same kind of thing. But as you grew up, Bevy, this is what I love about you. You love your body.
Yes.
You're so confident about Yeah, everything. When I first met you, you were a force of nature when you walked through the door. You owned it in an industry where that's not so much celebrated.
No.
You've been on venues and on TV shows where the thickness, our size, who we are is not celebrated. And you found that. How did you find that confidence?
It wasn't nothing to find. I always had it. It was
Oh,
there. Listen, Sherri, I don't even get why the conversation is even happening. I look good. You know, the weight fluctuates, but I feel good about myself. And even when, like right now I'm suffering from the corona weight, you know, like most people.
yes.
Except
Yeah.
for you, Sherri, you done lost all the corona weight and then some. Baby, you baby, you snatched like a
Tell you something.
popsicle. You
That
snatched
corona
like
weight,
a
trying to go to bed
popsicle.
with that corona weight, it's too heavy. I couldn't take it no more.
No, listen. I'm with you. I'm like, something got to give. But, you know, even with this thickness of the corona weight, I still have to do on my TV. I have to do on my press. So I have to find a way to make peace with it, right? And so I find my clothes and I'm like, okay, well, that, you know, well, not that one. Because that's not for corona weight. Okay.
Yeah.
That one. You know what I mean? But ultimately, I love my frame. I always say I have a good frame. I truly am an hourglass kind of girl. You know, I
Yes,
really
you are.
do have, you know, I got that booty and I got the little, you know, I got, well, not so little titties, but, and the waist go in the moments, you know, no matter how big I get, I'm still very proportioned really well. And so I feel good about it. I feel good about myself. And I've never ever looked to outside, for outside validation, certainly not from white spaces. Um, that just never occurred to me because I knew that what they valued had nothing to do with my style of beauty. They don't value dark skin. They don't value short hair. They don't value this Smitty nose. They don't value all these things. So when am I looking to them for validation? Well, you won't find it. You can't go looking for something and you know you don't find it. Who want to go on an Easter egg hunt that never ends? Not me. So for me, when I'm in white spaces, I just go in and go through and say, well, you're gonna learn today.
You know,
And
going
they do.
into white spaces, I think that what appeals to people, you walk in the door and you're so confident. You come in, you own it, you don't care what people think. And it's very intriguing to folks who've never had that.
Yes.
So I think I would say women who are watching you now, young girls who go, I don't know if I'm good enough, if my body is good enough, and I'm looking at this and that. What would you say to them about finding who they are and owning it?
Well, I would say, women have a tendency to be able to run down everything that's wrong with them. I bet
Mhm.
you every woman that's watching this right now, if we had to ask her, name 5 things that you hate about yourself, baby, she could rattle them off so
Yeah,
quick.
heartbeat.
If you asked her, give us 3 things that you like about yourself, she'd be hard pressed. She might say something like, I'm a good mother and I'm really good at my job. But it would be nothing really about her. It would be all about the things that she does for others.
Yes.
Because we find a lot of value in service. And it's good to be in service to people, but you have to serve yourself and you have to love yourself. And when I talk about the 4 agreements in the book, be impeccable with your word. The first word that you got to be impeccable with is the word that you speak on yourself.
Mm.
You have to
Mm.
be impeccable with the word that you speak on yourself. You cannot speak poorly or disrespectfully or disdainfully about yourself. Sherri, there's this trope that happens in acting, and you see it with what's the girl, the Australian girl, the white girl. She lost a lot of weight now.
Oh, you're talking about the girl from the Glee Club.
Yes,
Yeah.
she has a weird name.
Yeah,
Not
I
Blue.
forget her name. We know who
Yes.
yeah, she
Um,
lost all that weight.
yeah, but they'll do it with Melissa McCarthy. They'll do it with a lot of women, and they will make them the butt of jokes in these movies that they star in, and they
Mhm.
will be self-deprecating. One thing that you will never find with Bevy Smith, I'm never going on anybody's show and being self-deprecating about myself. I'm not going to do it. I'm
Ooh.
not figuring to do it. And I will say this too. I'm not going to take roles where I have to be self-deprecating because I think it's enough already.
All
I
right.
think it's really enough already because I'm pursuing the acting and everything.
I
But
know it's not pursuing it. It's right there. It's right there. This is your season for the taking. I love it. I'm gonna say because this is the elephant in the room, or I would say the boobs in the room.
right.
Because we both are boobalicious women and we love them. Somebody left me a comment on my Instagram and they said,
Go
I'm just
ahead, Sherri.
curious. Well, sometimes I read them and she says, why do you always wear things that show your boobs? And I said, but why do you ask women who wear things that show their waist or their legs I like them and they look good and they're mine.
Yes.
Have you ever had any questions like that? Because
No,
yours
what? I really don't. I don't really get a lot of that. Also, too, I probably do. I don't read comments, so I just can't get into that business of reading comments. And also too, like maybe I'll peruse through things, and I don't really see a lot of negativity. My sister will be on a live when I'm on a live, and she'll see horrible things, and then she'll be like, ah, and I'll be like, Stephanie, please, they just miserable people, girl. Don't worry about them folks.
Yes.
But I don't get a lot of that. And I think too, it has something to do with the fact that I think people get the memo. They get the message that it's nothing you can do about it. I'm going to be good. I'm
You're
going
gonna
to
be
be
good.
just fine, 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 woo. So what is there really to talk about? But I really hope women that are watching us tonight can look at two women who are grown, seasoned, have had trials and tribulations, but have still managed to not just survive, but to thrive through it all.
You talk about trials and tribulations and going through Bevelations. You have been through it. I want to take folks back a little bit from where you are right now to what you had always dreamed about. You were a receptionist, but you had dreamed about being in the fashion industry. Can you tell me about that
Yeah.
and where it
Well,
took you?
yeah, I loved fashion. My mom is a fashion play. I grew up in Harlem, it's a very fashionable community. And so I always loved fashion. And so when I got an opportunity to be a temporary receptionist at a fashion advertising agency, I seized that moment. And then when people would call in and ask for the job, I would say it was filled. And so then they came to me and said, well, Bevy, will you take the job? And I said, oh, well, I would be honored. And and I made a spicy $15,600. That was my first job, and it was
That was
amazing.
good for the first job.
That's first job, and I learned so much in that space. But then I had these wonderful mentors, and all four of them were white, and I want to say their names: Jeff McKay, Kenny Valenti, Gail Malloy, Chuck Cohen, and none of them, with the exception of Kenny, he was from Queens, and he was definitely from a hard scrabble background. But none of the rest of them, we didn't seem to have anything in common, but they got me. And they were very kind and gracious. But the best part of it, Sherri, they didn't look at me like a charity case or like poor little Bevy, because I made it clear I came from a very good household. I was not struggling. I was not like, oh, I need some food and will you teach me how to read? It was not going to be one of those stories. And so, I set the tone. Even as a child, I set the tone. I let these folks know who I was and what my pedigree was. And they were so gracious. And then they took me under their wing and they gave me opportunities. And when they gave me opportunities, I literally seized them and I soared. And I didn't let anything stop me. And I
You
did the work. I did the
you
work.
did.
And that's the most important thing, Sherri. You got to do the work, baby.
I am writing things down as you talk of setting the tone, doing the work. I want to keep going because you went on to Vibe magazine.
Mm-hmm.
What did you do at Vibe magazine?
Well, Sherri, I'm very proud to say that I was the person responsible for breaking all the designer fashion in Vibe magazine. And I will tell you this, Sherri, it had never been done before me and it was never done after me. I left Vibe in 2006 the second time. And do you know, there's not one black magazine or media entity that exists that gets luxury fashion. But I had Prada and Gucci and Dior and Armani and all the names up in Vibe magazine because I realized that I was a cultural ambassador. The reason why I was able to break that business is because I literally believed that we deserve to be seen in that space and in that light. So that was what Harlem gave me. So I was not coming in there like alms for the poor? Will you please advertise? I understood that this was going to be a reciprocal relationship. You were giving me money, but I was giving you entree into a culture that you couldn't even fathom how fashionable they were. And now today, of course, who's the fashion leaders? Who sets all the trends? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I knew, but I knew that always. I knew that from a kid. So I just simply went forth to Paris and Milan and explained that to them, and took, art books about us, Jacob Lawrence and James Van Der Zee, and that kind of stuff, and explained to them that Puffy and Mary and Lil Kim being fly was not a mistake. That's a part of our cultural legacy and DNA. And then I would not be denied.
You could not be denied. How do you walk in? It's, you're walking into a meeting that you haven't been in before. You're presenting ideas that have never been done before, have never been implemented with people who, some folks in power don't have big vision. Just because
No.
you're in power don't mean you have big vision. You had vision. So how did you come in with people going, I want to marry fashion to rappers and athletes and put it in this magazine? Did you meet resistance?
Initially I did, but I met the resistance within the pages of Vibe, within the corporate culture.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, when I arrived, didn't believe I was going to be able to do it, including, someone that I replaced. They didn't believe I was going to be able to do it. But I knew, because, a lot of times, just because people are Black doesn't mean that they have we're not a monolith.
That's right.
So, we don't have shared experiences all the time. So I was a Black person from a place that birthed the greatest cultural revolution of the 20th century, the Harlem Renaissance. So I'm going in with the knowledge of Zora Neale Hurston and Langston Hughes and James Baldwin. I'm going in with that information. A. Philip Randolph. I'm going in there with, the people. That's who I was actually traveling with. Okay.
Yeah.
I was traveling with the forefathers of Black history. I was traveling with the people that set the tone. And so that's what gave me the gumption, because I knew what we had been able to create out of nothing and under much harder circumstances. So I knew that, now I have this access and I have these coins and I have this intelligence. Wait until they see. And it was interesting because there was a language barrier. So I actually used a lot of pictures to illustrate it. I used to do street style photos, and this is way before cell phones. And I would take pictures with my disposable Kodak camera, and I would have them printed. But I would take the pictures at Vibe parties of people dressed head to toe in designer clothes. And when I would take them over to Europe, they would say, "Oh my God, this is new clothes. These is our recent collection. How can they take it? How can they afford?" And I would be like, "This is what we do, honey. We style and profile." And it's undeniable once you see it in living color. So
you were over at Vibe. You were doing something that had never been done before. You were making great money. You had an expense account. You were going all over the world. You were at the front row at the fashion shows. And yet you decided to leave Vibe.
yes.
That's a job that anybody would dream about.
Yeah.
What made you say, I gotta go?
I had to go because I was miserable and I was making people around me miserable. I was really acting out in the workplace. I had 5 assistants and 10 assistants in the span of 5 years, which, you can say that people that weren't doing their jobs and you were, you required so much. But then you have to also look at yourself and say, maybe I was a little stringent. Maybe I was doing a bit much. Maybe I was a little bit of a taskmaster. And I was just unhappy. And I just remember I was a shopaholic.
Yeah.
I was a bit of I wouldn't call myself a sexaholic because I don't want to, be flippant about it. But I was certainly having a lot of dalliances in an attempt to kind of make myself happy. And on both of those things were very temporary moments. They were very temporary stopgap moments. The minute you get home from the stores and you got to hang the stuff up in your closet, you're like, the minute you get done with the dalliance and you've slayed them, darling, and they're resting and they've gotten you the champagne and the rag, and they've cleaned you up, darling. You like want them to leave,
You ready? Like, why are you still here?
Why are you still here, darling? So It became one of those things where I had to look at myself and say, you know, what can make me happy? Where is the road to happiness? And what I found was that I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew I couldn't keep doing what I was doing. So I changed my name to Bevy, and that was the first thing I changed. And that was the kind of like the signal. I'm about to change my life. Sherri, it took from having the meltdown in Milan at the age of 33 to being 38 years old, changing jobs, going from Vibe to Rolling Stone. I'm 38 years old, and then I finally quit my job and pursue this life that I'm leading now.
How to quit a job, Bevy, at Rolling Stone, at Vibe, and say, because you told your boss when he said, "What are you gonna do?" You said, "I don't know." To walk out, what did that take? How did you find out who you were?
Well, I did a lot of introspective work. We were just talking before we came on here that, you know, we're both doing teletherapy. That really, really worked. It really helped me, get my mind together, especially as it pertains to men and relationships. And then also too, I did a lot of introspective work on myself with self-help books. The Artist Way allowed me to know that I was a creative. For a long time, Sherri, I was dating men who were creatives. And I thought that I was getting the creativity through osmosis. And I was the muse. A lot of, and you know, I called myself a muse because a lot of the men that I was dating were successful artists. And so I would feed them ideas and things like that. And they would often take them and they would work. So, you know, there was a sense of like, yes, I am a creative. I'm a muse, like a Greek goddess. But that's a horrible thing. Why be the muse when you can be the masterpiece? You know what I mean?
Oh, and you came out and you were the masterpiece. You left your job. You left a 6-figure job with all of the perks, going to Europe. You had a breakdown in Milan. Who of us can? I've had a breakdown in near Hackensack, New Jersey, when I was renting an apartment. Never in Milan, never been. But you left all of that and you were broke for a minute. You didn't have any money in pursuit of finding out what you wanted to do, but you were happy.
Yeah. That's the broke with blissful chapter of the book. And I was very, very happy. I was very, very broke, and I was very, very happy. The brokenness included the housing court. The brokenness included taking the bus versus town cars. The brokenness included, borrowing money from my elderly mom. Like, you know what I mean? Like something I never thought I would ever do. You know, I had been giving my mom an allowance for years, and then all of a sudden I had to backtrack and be like, girl, can I borrow $500? You know what I mean? And, you know, all of those things. But out of that, I was able to create Dinner with Bevy, which was a business that sustained me, not only sustained me financially, but sustained me creatively. And that's the reason why I have such great relationships with celebrities.
I want you to tell people from this creative, when you were doing Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, which is an amazing book, The 4 Agreements, of this idea that was birthed, Dinners with Bevy. It is a dinner with Bevy that everybody tries to get to. It's very exclusive. The invitation. Please explain what Dinner with Bevy is.
So basically, it was a dinner party that I created based on knowing that there were all these influential Black celebrities, but they didn't have any access to white mainstream magazines or high-end fashion brands. So I had those relationships. So I would invite the editors from Vogue and GQ and all these places, and I would invite the people that worked at Louis Vuitton or Saint Laurent or, you know, any of these brands, and then I would have them meet Ja Rule, or I would have them meet Pharrell, or I would have them meet Kerry Washington, or I would have them meet Idris Elba. You know, all these different types of people, and it would be my gig to connect the dots. And now, of course, we see all of our Black artists getting all this mainstream press, which we're so happy about. But back when I was doing it, it was very hard to get that done.
And you married up athletes and rappers to fashion. So when we see it now, it's just, you know, we just see it. But that's something that you started, where you see these athletes now dressed down and designed. They're going to their plane wearing designer clothes. You introduced and married these two together from being unemployed, and that idea was birthed.
Yes.
I want to jump forward because I know we have people who are going to want to ask questions, and there's 2 really important things. So I'm going to jump fast forward. Your father, Smitty, is everything to you. God rest his soul, rest in peace. Can you talk a little bit about your father and your relationship with him before you lost him?
Yeah, I mean, uh, I tell this story in the book. It was a blackout that happened in the early 2000s in New York City. And my dad was already like in his 80s. And I called my parents and they said they were fine. I said, I'm coming up there to check on y'all. And they said, don't do it. We're fine. And I said, I'm coming up there. When I got up there, it took me 2 hours because I was all the way downtown. I had to come all the way uptown. When I got there, my father was sitting on the stoop with a bat. Now, keep in mind, he was 80 something years old. I said, Daddy, what are you doing out here? He said, I had to make sure that my baby was okay.
Ooh.
That's the kind of man my father was. And my dad, was the person who always bought us Valentine's Day candy. He would go and get us Valentine's Day candy. Um, he was so just loving, and he did everything for his kids. Like everything was for Beverly, Stephanie, and Jerry. That's it. That we were the alpha and the omega for him. That you know what I mean? And so just a beautiful, beautiful soul, and gave us information and tools that we will take with us forever. I know my sister, my sister and my dad was the closest. Like they had the most beautiful relationship. And in his later years, when he really was getting old and very, very fragile, my sister was his caregiver. I was his caregiver financially. My sister was his personal caregiver.
Yes.
With the bathing and all of the things. And she would call him Mr. Smitty, and she would lotion his feet and do all these beautiful things. And my brother and I would always come when he was in his rehab facility, and we would read to him, and we would bring him food, and we would love up on him. And those are things that I miss. But he's definitely in a better place. You don't want them to last too long so that they lose their faculties and different things like that. And my dad was still with us mentally when he passed on, so I'm glad of that. But he's definitely missed. His birthday is February 8th, and so I'll be paying tribute to him on my radio show.
Well, we just thank Mr. Smitty for what he poured into you, because we are getting it back tenfold from you. I want to go because I know everybody wants to know. You left Rolling Stone. You did Dinners with Bevy. And then all of a sudden we see you on TV on Page 6 on Fashion Queens. How did this happen? How did you go from being shy to being confident to being on TV? What people train to do, they go to college to do. They're trained to be in front of the camera, and you had not been.
No.
What was that like?
It was like I knew I could do it. I had already done several things that were tough and that no one believed I could do. No one believed I could break all those fashion brands. So I'd already beat the odds already. And so I knew I could beat the odds again. So I wasn't looking for it. I kept my own counsel. That's what I call it. Keep your own counsel. I asked people their advice. I asked people for help. I still do to this day. But ultimately, I kept my own counsel. And so I was not shocked when I immediately booked a job on TV. I was not shocked when people started wanting me to write for them. I was not shocked by any of those things. Now, I will say I was grateful and I felt blessed and highly favored, but I was not like, oh, who, me? No, I knew I had what it took. And by the way, I trained. In the middle of all of it, I took improv classes, on-camera classes, acting classes. I did a lot of work. I did a lot of work on trying to make sure that when I hit that camera, when I got my opportunity, I wasn't going to muck it up.
You were ready.
Do the work.
Tell me, you said something in the book about sometimes women, we're so grateful and we're so thankful and praise God. That we forget to own that, yes, I can walk through that door. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes, I definitely want to speak about that. Yes, listen, you sat here and heard me say, I give thanks. I'm blessed and highly favored. But I also think that God made me in this impeccable way so that I can show up and show out. And so that I can acknowledge my greatness. That's not being conceited or boastful. That's just knowing the facts. I know some things about who I am and who I'm meant to be. And so when you're confronted by people that want you to be less than, when you're confronted by people that don't want you to toot your own horn or things like that, oftentimes those are people that want you to be in a subservient space. They want to place you. That's why I call it. Don't try and place me. I place myself. And where I'm going to place myself is at the top of the heap.
Woo.
And I'm going to keep going until I get there. But that's where I'm always seeing myself. I'm always seeing myself in an elevated space. I'm never down here.
So manifestation plays a good, it plays a big part in your life.
Obsessed. I manifest everything. And Sherri Shepherd, you know, we already talked a little bit offline. You know, I'm manifesting my next good thing. Well, all the work stuff I'm doing is already coming together. But I'm also manifesting my good man, my good partner. You know, I'm not interested in getting married, but because even my sister, who's very happily married, was like, you don't need to get married. And my mama said, you don't need to get married. So I believe them. They're women I respected, were married for a long time. So, okay, guess what? I want to be in a big, healthy, loving, respectful relationship with someone who can take care of himself, and we can just be partners in something called love. I'm not interested in having to take care of nobody, and no one has to complete me. I want someone who is an equal. We can come together, two wholes, and then, you know, I always say, you know, I'm living a life right now. I'm cake, and then I'm going to get some frosting, and my man will be frosting. But, you know, cake is very tasty.
It by itself.
By itself. You know, you put a little frosting on it, just make it a little sweeter.
It just makes it a little sweeter.
Okay.
You know, and we're going to go to the Q&A, but speaking of relationships, because you are happily single, I'm happily single. I had to go through a lot of pain to get to this place of being happily single. How do you feel about the fact that sometimes we bring down who we are and we make so many adjustments for men to the detriment of who we're supposed to be? Tell me about that.
Well, we can't do that, right? Because, you know, the right man is not going to want that. He's going to want us to shine. He's going to say, oh, look at my baby. Look at her go. Look at her strut. You know what I mean? He's going to appreciate all that we are and who we bring to the table. And so, you know, when you're trying to shrink and you're trying to like adjust yourself so that you can fit into someone else's idea of what a good woman is or a perfect woman is, that can't possibly last. Because you're lying to yourself and you're lying to him, which is not fair. So I think it's always best to show up as you are and then let the person decide whether or not that's someone that they want to go further with. So that's how I'm entering on my dating situations now. I'm like just showing up as Bevy Smith, or actually as Little Brown Bevy. I'm definitely, I think, and that's something important to know, to make sure that you show up as your most vulnerable self. Because I think a lot of times, especially if you've been hurt, you feel like you need to have more of a bravado and you need to be like, I'm not having it. But you know what? That's just a waste of time because ultimately we all want to be loved. We all want to be cared for. We all want to have a union. And so you have to show up with that willingness and that spirit in your heart and also illustrate that through action.
And I'm ask you one more thing before we go to the Q&A.
Okay.
I know people we hear this word brand. I'm a brand. What is your brand? You know, it's bandied about a lot, but how do you find out what would you define as a brand, and how do you find out what your brand is so that when you walk through that door, you're a little left of center? That has always served you well. Yeah. But how do we be that little left of center and walk in the door knowing that we're unique? How do we tap into that?
In my book, I have 2 chapters that address that. There's brand you. And there's the Red Soul Proposition. The Red Soul Proposition is all about how Manolo Blahnik used to be the it shoe. And then Louboutin came along and became the it shoe, the global.
A shout out to Louboutin.
Yeah,
the red bottom.
Oh my God, and those are good, Sherri.
This is good. Look, a lot of years to get it.
Yes, exactly. A lot of years, right? But so much more expensive than a Manolo Blahnik is as well. And what really sets them apart is that Louboutin has a red soul. So I put to you, what is your red soul? And I had to figure that out when I was like demanding money for my dinners. And I had to figure that out when I was going into TV. I turned down a job at Bravo immediately after I quit Rolling Stone because I knew that they were not offering me enough money because I knew my red soul. So how you find out your red soul is you do the introspective work to find out who you are at your core, how are you being perceived, how would you like to be perceived? And when you answer those 3 questions, then you'll get to the part of you that really is the best part and the part that you can then market and make the coins off of.
Bev, how do you go in? My advice when people say, how, negotiating, I always say no to the first offer.
Yeah.
Because they
Oh,
always have. You said something in your book that I thought was very interesting about when you take a certain amount of money, the corporation knows they're going to make that money off of you. So when you're telling a person, especially women, we have a hard time asking for what we're worth.
yeah.
It's so different. Men, they're not even up to that level, and they will ask for more than what they were.
Yes.
But we have a very hard time with that. How do you go in a room and ask for what you were? How you know what you were?
Well, then you do the work, right? Because you got to ask your friends. I just got offered a role on just a guest role on the show, and so I got a rate, and I called Miss Lawrence because he did Empire, and it was a one-shot deal on Empire many moons ago. I said, "Baby, this is what they offering me. Is that right?" And he said, "That's good, mother, but go back and ask for X, Y, and Z." I said, "Okay." So don't be afraid to tell people. See, sometimes you'll be like, I don't want people in my business. Well, guess what? I found that the only way, especially as Black people and as women, if we don't share the stories, if we don't share the rates that we're making, we will always be underpaid. Because we have to know. We have to know. And the only way you're going to know is if you ask somebody.
I'm going to tell you this, girl. I know when Lonnie Love started The Real and Cheryl Underwood started The Talk, I told them what I was making, because if you don't ask and if we don't share, because they try to keep us in that thing of, if I tell somebody, I'm not going to make it. But if we don't share, then that other person doesn't know how to leverage anything. We don't know how to negotiate if we don't know. And I thank God for Rosie O'Donnell when I got The View, because she said, this is what I make. This is what Joy makes. This is what Lizzie makes. And what they had offered me was about 10 times lower than what she told me, because they thought she'll be happy just to get this. And had she not told me, I wouldn't have been able to make the money. I will forever be thankful. Now, if you're doing something and you're not in the same business as me, I'm not telling you what I make. But if you're trying to do the same thing, I'm going to tell you what I make so that you know how to go and negotiate and walk in that room confidently to say, I deserve this because I know somebody else is getting it.
Yes, indeed. It's so true. We have to share the information. We have to. And I'm very happy to tell people what I make for my speaking engagements, on my radio show, my TV opportunities, any of it. Because, like you said, if we don't know what, we're just in the dark. And that's the way they like to keep us. And they also like to make us think there's only room enough for one or two of us.
And there's not. Boy, if I could tell people, so much room over here, up here.
Abundance, baby. That's what we're living in, Sherri. Abundance. Abundance of blessings, abundance of good looks, abundance of hot men, abundance of good men, abundance of coins, abundance of houses, and abundance of questions. Michaela, we got to segue to Q&A.
We got to segue to Q&A. I could have you literally for an entire night, but yes, because I know people want to ask. I know you got questions flowing. Yes,
I do. I also have never seen as many yeses, hands up emojis, hearts in any chat. I've been watching it this whole time, and people are just so inspired and amazed by both of you. And Bevy, everything you're saying, there are snaps and claps, and like I said, so many hands up praise emojis. I can't count them all. So you should know that everybody's loving this, and I'm sure that they can't thank you enough for what you've given us in the book and what you've given us now with this amazing interview. And Sherri, thank you for your questions. We're not done yet. We only have a few minutes for a couple of Q&A. So if somebody's got a really great question out there, you guys have already been super active in the chat. You know how to use it. So feel free to ask your questions. I'd love to talk to you, Bevy, about, I mentioned this earlier about storytelling. How was it transferring your ability to storytell on radio and in magazines and fashion into a book? What was that like, that transfer for you? Was it similar? Was it very different? What was it like?
I have been earmarking stories for a book for the longest time. So when I had that meltdown in Milan, I knew that was how I wanted to open my book, because it was cinematic. I knew it would set the tone. When I was really bad broke and taking that bus and eating the salmon croquettes and going to housing courts, I was like, ooh, that's going to be good for the book. You know what I mean? So I had been stockpiling this information and everything. Sherri, when you wrote your book, did you find that you were stockpiling, or did you do it from your journal, or how did you do
I
it?
did it from my journal. It's really important. You do a lot of journaling,
Yes.
Bevy, and it's really important, I think, because as we get older, our memories are like a game show. It's like, give me that phrase. Who's that girl? What,
Right, right.
And so when you journal, you can go back and read things and it becomes so much more fresh and alive. So yes, my stuff was definitely from my journal.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Okay. What advice do you have for women wanting to write?
Ooh.
I like that one specifically because you've had a plethora of jobs and a wide career, but specifically writing. I like that one.
Oh, it's so funny because I was very cowed to write. I was like really nervous about even trying to write because my sister's a really good writer. And when you have an older sister that does something incredibly well, of course, you're going to be intimidated. And I had to get over that. And that's something I want to tell people. Her gift is her gift and my gift is my gift. I'm not going to compare myself to her. You know what I mean? Because I can't, you know. And so I would say that when you're thinking about writing, you just have to do it. You have to put the pen to the paper. You just have to get up and write. And you know, Sherri and I both love The Artist Way. In The Artist Way, there's something called morning pages, and you literally have to write 3 pages a day. And you know, honestly, some days I would get the 3 pages, and some days I wouldn't. But I would always sit down and write. And just getting into the habit of writing really did help me with the process of starting the book. And I've started several books. I'm actually now going back to a fiction book that I started writing 20 years ago. It's called The Helper, and I'm going back to that. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do a children's book around Little Brown Bevy as well.
So yeah, so when those come out and travel is safe in the world again, you're coming back to Tattered. And Sherri, you too for your next one.
I would love to, but to piggyback off what Bevy said, when you write, it's a stream of consciousness. Don't censor yourself.
Yes.
You know, and The Artist Way is an amazing book. One thing that I do sometimes is something that happened that really stands out in my mind. I will write about it and or if you have a hard time writing, speak it into a tape recorder. Because sometimes you'll come out with a lot of fresh stuff. If you just speak it into a tape recorder, you can transcribe it. But just be kind to yourself. Don't censor yourself and just write. It comes. It's a muscle.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to ask Bevy, oh gosh, I think this, you talked about everything is as it should be. I just wanted that stood out for me so much in Bevelations of things that we go through, trials, tribulations. We have to know that everything is as it should be. Can you please explain that?
For me, it just simply means that I steady myself. I literally steady myself with those words. I calm myself whenever something is going what seems like going awry. Whenever I feel overwrought, I just steady myself and I say everything is as it should be. And another thing that goes a companion phrase for that is trouble don't last always.
Ooh.
I needed that. When I tell you I needed trouble don't last always, and everything is as it should be, and that was like a duo for me. That was a combo platter. Because you know, when you're going through it, you feel like you will not get through it.
Yes.
And you just feel like, when is this gonna be over? Is it ever gonna be over? And sometimes you can't see a way out. And that's why for me, you know, trouble don't last always. And then everything is as it should be is simply this. You know, when they say God's a man's rejection is God's protection, that's basically everything is as it should be.
That was a trigger. Thank you.
Right. That's a trigger.
Yeah.
But we don't know why. We don't know the why, but it always shows up. You know, sometimes we're denied things that we think we desperately want and that we deserve and all this kind of stuff. And then if we're looking out for the signs, and that's something else I want to say. That's why you got to study yourself and you got to get quiet. Because if you do that, you will see that all of these answers will come to you. But if you're so busy running every which way but loose, and you overthinking things, and you're looking everywhere but except in yourself, you won't get the real answers. and so and you'll be at a loss. So for me, everything is as it should be, and it will all be revealed in time. Come on, DeBarge.
Yep, DeBarge, girl. Woo!
Be revealed in time.
I don't know about you, Sherri, but I'm starting to feel like that this has been my virtual therapy. So a shot of confidence boost. I hate to even think about ending this, because truly this has been such a wonderful. I don't know. I've loved being a fly on the wall to your conversations and being able to hear your stories, and it's just so wonderful. And Bevy, now that we have this precious book from you, we get to read them and continue to read them. I want to ask you both, what did this book teach you? And Bevy, either you're about yourself as a writer, a nugget that you didn't get to share. Sherri, about yourself, something you learned that you just want to take with you. I'd love to ask you first, Sherri, as a reader, and then end with our author of the hour here as the writer.
Absolutely. I read this book, and I did not expect to get as many nuggets of wisdom as I got from Bevelations. I learned about stepping past fear. I learned about stepping out on faith. I learned about being still. I learned about not diminishing who you are and everything that God created you to be. And that it's okay. It's okay to be by yourself. Sometimes in the moments, those seasons of being by yourself are when the greatest ideas come to you, as in Dinner with Bevy. Oh my gosh. And I read this book and I said, it's going to be okay. I learned that my age, it gets better. It gets better later. That's a chapter.
Later.
It gets better. Both Bevy and I, we are in our 50s.
Yes.
And we are living our best life rather than in our 30s. You gone ladies, we the aunties. And I learned that it gets better later. And it has. Yeah. So this book has been so phenomenal to me as a woman, as a Black woman, being in an industry that sometimes does not celebrate me. And I've learned about my sister friends and how to hold them close. So I'm in there because I could keep going.
And Sherri, we celebrate you. We celebrate you all the time. You lift us up. And I said this really quick. When I came on The View as a guest co-host in 2014, you took my hand. You ran up in that dressing room. You didn't have on your wig yet. And you was like, Bevy, I just want to make sure you're okay. And I was like, I'm good, Sherri. And you were like, are you okay? And I said, I'm good. And you were so kind and such a beautiful guide for me. And I will never forget that. That's the generosity, and that's the sisterhood of that. I pray that everyone that's watching this can experience in their lives. So I thank you, Sherri Shepherd, for always just being there for me.
I thank you. But from your book, to answer your question, is there something that you wish to impart that we didn't get to people who are going to read this? What should they take away?
I want to just say, my number one Bevelations is it gets greater later. It truly does. When I think about the fact that I interviewed Miss Cicely Tyson on last Monday, and she passed away on Thursday. Wow. But she passed away knowing that her words were in the world. She passed away having won her Tony at 89, her honorary Oscar in 93. She was in her 40s when she did Sounder. I mean, she did all these amazing things at an age where many people feel like, okay, it's over. I should I'm washed up. I should hang it up. And I don't have any reason to believe that I can actually pursue the things that I've always had in my heart and in my spirit. And for me, what I learned about writing this book is that it uncorked my creativity like you would not believe. I feel like I was stagnant for such a long time. And when Page 6 TV got canceled, I knew I didn't want to rush into another TV show. And God is so good, because it turns out that my intuition was right. I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. Ooh. I'm resting my nerves. I'm letting my creativity spread beyond just being a fashion and pop culture pundit. And amazing things are going to come from this. And the other thing that I learned about from writing this book is that Lou Brown Bevy Smith, she's one hell of a writer. Because I like this book. I sit up and I read it. I'm like, oh, that was good.
Oh, so many notes in the pages and margins of this book. Also, I wanted to say about Cicely Tyson, because you know the great love of her life was Miles Davis. And until
Not a good love, though.
passed away, they went through it. But she met him in her 50s.
Yes. Yes.
In her 50s. So when you think it's too late or we're not seen, yes, you are. He's not forgotten about you.
No.
And sometimes we're not ready back early on. We're ready now.
Yeah.
We got to season. We got to bake a little bit. So this Bevelations right here, you are a hell of a writer. Thank you for sharing this with the world. And even, you know, we didn't even get to so many of the chapters that Bevy wrote about. So you have to get the book. We teased you.
Yes, we have so many chapters that we did not even touch in this book.
Yes.
Get the book. There's practical information. It is a memoir, but it's really more of a self-help book. I have practical tips in here, and I have real things that you can actually utilize to change your life and to actually urge you on to follow your passions, even when you feel like you might be too old. But no, baby, it gets greater later. So
one other thing, Bevy, and I'm sorry to interrupt. We're in a pandemic. We're sitting at home. A lot of people are fighting depression, going, what do I do? I'm by myself. How do you get through this? Or can you give them some tips to get through this? Because it's gonna pass. We'll be out.
Well, you know, the first thing I did when I realized it was going to be a pandemic, I used to read the paper to my daddy, and you know, and I was keeping them abreast of everything that was happening when it was moving from China and then moved into Italy and all that. And I was reading it to my dad. I was like, "Ooh, Daddy, I think this might be a really bad thing." I immediately got into therapy when New York City closed down. I was like, "Ooh, I live by myself. I'm single. I better get some therapy because I don't think I'm gonna be okay without it." And so that was something I did. I think that this is a great time for everyone, especially if you're unemployed or underemployed. It's a great time to really look at yourself and think about those gifts, those innate gifts that we all have, those things that people always come to us for. My sister has her very own catering business, Miss Lolly's Kitchen. My brother has his artwork, the Art of Timberlake. Like, you know, so my siblings are doing things beyond the things that they do to make their money, for their 9 to 5 or what have you. They're exploring their creativity, and it's a great time to do that. And I'll say this as well. You know, we need to get back to having hobbies and interests.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us are working every day and we just living for the weekend, and then it's like Groundhog's Day. It just, you know, you just trying to pack all your fun and your life into a weekend. But for 5 days out of the week, you're doing nothing but things that you hate. We got to release that. And so this is a great time to look at your life and think about how you're going to pivot. And it doesn't mean you have to do something outrageous like I did, like quit a job, but it simply means tapping into that unsung creativity and that vision that you once had for your life. Go and find it. Excavate. Like, go.
You know, you talk about in your book, Bevy, when tapping into those things while we're in the midst of this, because I don't think we're going to be back here again. This is an isolated time. But tapping into that thing that has always scared you, that thing that desire in your heart that you've put on the shelf with the fine china, that where you said, I'm not worth it. That's dumb. It's that thing that scares you. Look at it again.
Yes. Yes. Sherri Shepherd, you know, I went on The View last week and I sat up there and told Whoopi Goldberg, you know, I'm trying to be like you, Whoopi. I'm trying to be an EGOT. And she said, and you will, Miss B. But that was a big deal to say to millions of people that I'm trying to be a damn EGOT.
And you said it, and you put it out there.
I put it out there because that is my intention. I'm definitely going to work towards EGOT status, damn sure.
That's it. Speak it.
And oh my gosh, again, I hate the idea of even just ending this. It's been so lovely. I truly cannot thank you guys enough. And like they said, there is way more in the book, guys. That's why she wrote a book, right? Like, you need to make sure that you go get yourself a copy of Bevelations at tatteredcover.com or at one of our locations in the Denver metro area. Look at them merchandising it, loving it. It's great. But I want to give you guys one last chance just to remind people who you are, where they can find you online, and anything else you just want to close us out with before we end this evening. Sherri, you'll start and we'll close it out with Bevy.
Okay, you can watch me every morning or afternoon on Dish Nation, our pop culture show, and my podcast with Kim Whitley called Two Funny Mamas. This was born out of the pandemic of what can we do and something that we were scared to do. And we're on our 39th episode.
And
So
it's
we're
hilarious.
on YouTube. Look up Two Funny Mamas or go to your favorite podcast platform and look up Two Funny Mamas. And I'm on a show called Call Your Mother with Kira Cedric on ABC. Every Wednesday, and you can watch me on Mr. Iglesias, which is streaming on Netflix. And Bevy, I'm working on a children's book too. You've inspired me to get that pen back up.
Yes,
And
I
finish
love
writing.
it. I love it. Something for your little Jeffrey.
Something for little Jeffrey. And I'm open. You talked about having a partner in life. And I said I was going to borrow your list. Read Bevelations because she's got a great list of what's great for a partner. And so being in the season of being open.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Here we go.
Well, I'm open. I'm in the season of openness. Well, my legs are not open, but
oh, you got to do something. We don't want to be no rusty gate by the time he's ready to walk through.
No, that's true. Okay. But you can find me on Bevelations, Sirius XM, Radio Andy, every day at 5:00. I'm on all social media at Bevy Smith, and I'm always popping up doing Wendy Style Squad. I do fashion commentary for various shows, so you can find me somewhere on your TV. But in the meantime, in between time, please look out for me at the fourth quarter of 2021 because I am an art consultant on a film. It's an Apple film, and I am the art consultant because that's something that was one of my goals. I also have a development deal with a network, so I'm hoping to get some shows produced and on the air in 2021 as well. So these are all things I wrote in my book and that I'm manifesting in real time. Yes. And I also just booked a acting job as well, as I mentioned. And it's just for one episode, but you know, I always say that once you are paid to do something, that means you're a professional at it. So I'm about to get my first check as an actress, and I'm very, very excited. So the best is yet to come. It gets greater later. I hope my story inspires you. I hope Sherri's story inspires you. I know she inspires me. And so I want everyone to live their absolute best life. Yes. And please don't settle. The only thing you ever want to settle is your facelift and when you get your ass implants. Those are the only two things you want to settle.
Don't settle.
There you go. The best advice. I, again, thank you both. If you'll stick around, so we talk a little bit afterwards after I end this stream. Once again, guys, you can get Bevelations at tatteredcover.com or at any of our locations. I'm McKaylee with Tattered Cover. Thank you guys again for joining us this evening. Stay safe and happy reading, everybody.
Bye. Love you, Bevy.
Love you more, Sherri.